Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's California Community College Mental Health Services Grant Program webinar. I'm Joanne Oshel. I am the webinar coordinator for today's session. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a few of the technology tools that you'll be using during today's session. So if everybody can look at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you will see the chat box area. We ask that during today's session that you please post all questions to the chat box area and that responses will be made after today's webinar from Colleen Ganley with answers to everything in a return email or posting. So for now, if everyone could go ahead and post into the chat box what organization you're with and maybe what position that you hold, and that will let us know who is on the webinar with us today. If you are on the phone line only, if you can respond to the reminder email that was sent out about an hour ago and let me know that you're on the phone line only, I will make sure to post this into the chat box to make sure to let everyone know that you are with us on the phone line. And also feel free to send any questions to me via that email as well during the session, and I can post those into the chat box too. All right, so while everyone is posting your information into the chat box, I will let you know that during today's session, it is being recorded. And that will be available after the fact in a couple of days. And you can request that, I believe, either from Colleen, and she can explain a little bit further if she'll have that to send the link to you or if they will post that somewhere. And also in that reminder email, there was a copy of the PowerPoint for today's session. Feel free to use that to follow along or pass that along to your colleagues if you need to. I believe that is all of the technology tools that we'll be using. All of the phone lines have been muted at this point. So like I said before, if you have questions, please post those to the chat box area. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I will pass it on to Colleen to get started.
Very good. Thank you, Joanne. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today we're hosting a technical assistance webinar for the Mental Health Services RFA that was released on December 28th. My name is Colleen Ganley, and I'm a specialist with the Chancellor's Office. My work area includes health, mental health, food, housing, services to homeless students, and foster youth. I'm just over a year into my position at the Chancellor's Office, so I spent many, many years working for our nonprofit, the Foundation for California Community Colleges, during which time I worked on a similar grant program, the California Community College Student Mental Health Services Grant. That grant was funded through Prop 63 dollars. This particular grant is being funded through legislated Prop 98 dollars. During my foundation years, I also worked on many other Chancellor Office initiatives, including Foster Youth Success Initiative, CalFresh enrollment for students, and just a whole variety of other activities. So I have lots of years working with the colleges on special grant-funded projects. So as Joanne mentioned, we sent everybody the slides before the webinar so you can follow along using the slides. And we will be posting the slides onto the Chancellor's Office website on the page, the Mental Health Services page. And I'm not sure if folks even knew that a Mental Health Services page exists on the website for the Chancellor's Office, but it does. All information and documents related to this RFA are posted on the website, and you can see that the URL directly to the Mental Health Services page is listed there on the slide. And really, we need to do this to make sure that the process is fair for everyone, so including folks that aren't able to participate in today's webinar. So all the communication that happens about the RFA and questions that get submitted, it all needs to be made available publicly to everybody who might want to be applying. So for that reason, I won't be answering questions live on the phone. And that's really just for fairness purposes to make sure that nobody has an unfair advantage. I will recognize that the timing for this RFA was not optimal, but we needed to accommodate the state legislative and fiscal cycles while simultaneously managing multiple and competing obligations. So this is one bucket of the work that consumes my time, and then there's multiple others. So I do apologize in advance about the timing for the distribution of the RFA. And we'll talk a bit more about this later in the webinar, but I wanted to acknowledge that as it stands now, this is one-time funding only. So having said that, I think it's a great opportunity to establish some baseline information regarding the needs of the students and of our system, and then to position us to advocate for additional or ongoing funding in future budgets. So hopefully this is the lens through which you guys are writing your application. This is the lens through which you're looking at this opportunity, is that this is a chance for us to really articulate the need to the legislature so we can advocate for ongoing funds. And for those of you on the line who know me, you know that that's really what I'm about, is you know, being strategic about how we use the dollars, and then reporting back about the great things that we did with the dollars. Once again, the phones will be muted. We'll be posting the recorded version of this webinar on the website. I will say it's worth noting that the Chancellor's Office Mental Health Services website, in general, it's really quite out of date, and I haven't had the opportunity to update it. But the important point is that you know that any information including the RFA or any subsequent documentation associated with the RFA is all located there on the website. So all of the information being presented today is available either in the RFA or will be available in the frequently asked questions document. Let's take a look. Hopefully any and all questions have already been submitted or will be submitted today during the call. I will be working with with the folks in the Chancellor's Office in the Contracts Department, the Fiscal Department, the Legal Department, to put together responses to any of the questions that come in, and we'll post an updated FAQ as we collect questions. My goal is to try to have the most up-to-date FAQ on the website by tomorrow. That is my goal. That it will be a little dependent on other people in the office in terms of their availability to help formulate the responses, but that is my goal. I think I've already mentioned this. Per the fairness rule, we're not allowed to respond to individual questions, and I'm just referring folks to the FAQ document on the website. If you submit a question and based on the response, it doesn't appear that we really understood what you were asking, I would highly recommend you to reformat your question or reformulate how you're asking the question, and then we'll take another run at it and try to answer. So sometimes people ask a question, I misunderstood the essence of what they were asking, so don't be shy, just resubmit your question. If you didn't get the answer to the question that you wanted, that's a little bit different, but if I clearly misunderstood your question, please reformulate it and resubmit it. Just a little bit of background. These funds were appropriated in the 17-18 state budget, and they came through Senate Bill 85, which was a trailer bill to the main budget bill, which was Senate Bill 99. There's a total of $4.5 million that were allocated for community colleges to run the Mental Health Services Grant Program. I should say it's worth noting that in 16-17, there was a bill, Assembly Bill 2017, that was introduced, which would have included funds for community colleges for mental health services in the 16-17 budget, but that bill was vetoed. However, it was a result of those legislative activities that really prompted the inclusion of these dollars in the 17-18 budget. So a lot of advocacy going on behind the scenes to get these dollars into the budget. A lot of times it takes time to get some groundswell to really recognize, what a significant need there is across the systems for any number of initiatives. The next slide provides all important dates associated with the request for application. The most important date, of course, is the due date, which is Thursday, February 1st by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've requested, and this is in the RFA, that you submit your applications electronically to me at cganley@cccCCO.edu. We are in the process of assembling a great group of folks who are going to read and score the applications. A minimum of 2 to 3 people will be reading each of the applications, and notification of the intent to award will be made on February 9th. Someone out in the field recognized a mistake in the RFA, and that was on page 15 in section L. We indicated that we will be releasing the intent to award notification on February 8th. And then on page 16, section N, we indicate that the intent to award notification will happen on February 8th. So for clarification, we will be releasing the intent to award on February 9th. Final awards will be announced on March 1st, and we will be seeking approval from the Board of Governors during their regularly scheduled meeting on March 20th. And then grants are scheduled to get started on May 1st. And one thing, a housekeeping note that I forgot to mention at the very beginning, if you're on the phone, telephone only, and you aren't able to submit your questions in the chat box, please just send them directly to my email, which is sort of sprinkled all over this, the PowerPoint. Just send your questions directly to me and they'll get added to the FAQ. So a little bit about the funding. The funding opportunity, we have 3 main buckets. The first funding pool is for multi-college districts applying on behalf of multiple colleges within their districts. The maximum funding amount for these types of applications is $350,000, and we anticipate awarding up to 6 grants of this size. The second funding pool is either for single college districts or multi-college districts applying on behalf of just one college within their district. The maximum funding amount for these applicants is $250,000, and we also anticipate awarding up to 6 grants of this type. The third and final funding pool is designated for districts and colleges who currently offer no health or mental health services on campus, and also whom do not currently charge a student health fee. I have gotten a number of questions, a few questions about this particular designated funding pool. The maximum award amount in this category is $300,000, and we're hoping to award up to 3 awards for colleges who meet both of these criteria. We know based on data submitted from you guys to our office who does and does not charge a health fee. It's not a lot of schools, but there are schools that don't charge a health fee. And we designated these funds for colleges who meet these criteria because we wanted to make sure that everybody, including those that don't have any services or programs of this type, have the opportunity to operate this kind of grant program on their campus. I think a lot of times the schools that don't have anything oftentimes are the schools that get left out of opportunities because they don't already have infrastructure built. And so we very intentionally designated funds for schools that are interested to start something but don't have the resources to do so. Matching funds. This particular requirement also generated a number of questions. The CCCSMH, as I'm calling it, grant program, is a matching grant that requires a dollar-for-dollar match. To reduce the burden, we're being as flexible as possible regarding allowable match sources. Those currently include in-kind resources, general funds, categorical funds, student health fees, and philanthropic funds. That's not an exhaustive list. Those are just the most direct things that I believe that folks are currently using to support these kind of activities. So the general rule or the litmus test in terms of considering a source of match is, will the funds that you're proposing to use as match be used to support activities or objectives identified in the RFA? If, for example, your college is using or is planning to use equity funds to provide mental health services to underrepresented students, this would be an allowable source of match. If your college, conversely, is using equity funds to do tutoring services for underrepresented students, that's not considered allowable match. Another example, if you have a college nurse who spends 25% of her time doing depression screening or other mental health services to students or training around mental health for faculty and staff, then 25% of the total cost of that nurse's compensation can be used as match. And again, I think people have a lot of questions about match and what's allowable. And so if you have questions, submit them here. I'm glad, please. Even if you think your question is silly, please ask it, because I want everybody to have the information they need to comfortably identify the match and recognize that this is a little bit new for some folks. It is a few things to note. You need to make sure whoever provides oversight for the matching funds is aware that you're going to use the funds as match, and that they agree to the activities that the match will be used to support. So if you are using equity funds to do mental health services, you need to make sure your equity coordinator and any folks up the food chain know that you're going to use that match for that purpose, and that they're in agreement that those activities are, they're in support of using those dollars in that way. There are a number of questions that have been submitted already about match. I would refer you to the frequently asked questions document. And also, if you don't feel like publicly posting a question on this webinar, you're welcome to just send it individually to me on my email. The performance period, once the grants are awarded, they will begin May 1st, 2018 with an end date of June 30, 2020. I've already mentioned that these are one-time only funds, not renewable as it stands now, though ideally and collectively we can show the legislature how effectively and efficiently we use these funds, and they'll consider giving us additional funds or ongoing funds in future budgets. We will work with our group to read and score and select the colleges to participate, and we reserve the right to work with the colleges, the selected colleges, on modifications to their work plans, their budgets, their scope of work. As per the RFA, only one application per district is allowed. The applications must reach an overall score of 70 points to be considered for selection. The goals, and I think the goals are pretty well articulated in the RFA, but just as a review, the main goals for the grant include providing mental health services to students, providing mental health training, suicide prevention, stigma reduction training to faculty, staff, and students. And a key objective is to do relationship building with county behavioral health departments and other local mental health service providers. As is indicated in the RFA, there are 6 specific goals identified for the grant program. I also included a number of resources under each one of the objectives that will help you accomplish those objectives. Those resources are hyperlinked in the RFA document, so if you hover your mouse over those identified resources in each of the 6 objectives, you can click on that and you'll get additional information about those resources. Many of those resources were developed as part of the California Community College Student Mental Health Program and are well vetted and recognized across the universe of folks doing this work. This next slide is just the scoring rubric. It's indicating the possible points for each section of the RFA. You can see there's a total of 100 points possible, with each section being weighted on importance relative to the overall application score. I just want to point out that the sustainability piece is worth a full 15 points, so hopefully you can be thoughtful when putting together your sustainability plan. This slide reflects the required components that need to be included in the application, including the maximum page limits for each section. The RFA also has work plan and budget forms. They're required standard templates that the Chancellor's Office uses, so please use those forms. Don't make new forms, and also please don't submit additional materials with your application. And we don't want to disqualify anybody, but this is sort of a standing rule that you don't add extra things to the application because that is not required. Just in fairness, this is the specifications, and please stick to them. We're asking that you include a staffing chart. That doesn't count towards the page limit in that section. Also, please stick with the formatting requirements. It's 1-inch margins, 12-point Arial font, and single-spaced pages. And one thing I like to say on this in this particular slide is the page numbers are maximum page limits. There is no minimum page limits, and so be concise. More doesn't always mean better, just is a general rule of thumb. The needs statement should be no more than 4 pages and should describe the circumstances in your district or your college that you're hoping to address using the grant funds. Please include demographic data, who are your students and why it makes sense to award the funds to your district or to your college. Your needs statement should articulate the availability or lack thereof of services at your college or in your community. And finally, please describe current or past efforts to support these types of activities, including the resources that have been allocated to these types of activities on your campus. In your application, please provide information about the programs and services currently available. Include projections regarding the number of students you hope to serve, the number of faculty, staff, and students who will receive training. Also explain your efforts to build relationships with county behavioral health departments and community-based mental health service providers. And you need to provide information about how you're going to measure the success of your program. We're not requiring third-party evaluation on your activities, and we were not funded to do third-party evaluations for these dollars, but we do want to have measurable outcomes, and we do need to report that back. So just keeping in mind, how are you going to measure the success of what you're proposing to do? Also include information about how these grant dollars will be leveraged for new or existing resources in terms of your sustainability plan. I can't say it enough, I do get a little repetitive. We really want to go back to the legislature and talk about how we strategically addressed the longer term needs of students beyond the life of the grant. Applications should include information about your district or college's capacity to administer state-funded projects, including the ability to submit program and fiscal reports. We need you to provide information about who's going to oversee the program and what types of support staff will get assigned. We request a staffing chart. The grants will begin on May 1st and end on June 30 of 2020. There is a required section in the application to address your plan for sustainability. You'll see there are some sections in the RFA that are requesting similar information, and that's okay. I would ask that you submit your application to me, cganley@ccco.edu. You will receive a confirmation email that your application was received. If you do not receive a confirmation email, please resubmit. It is my goal on Friday to respond to everybody who has submitted an application. And so it's very important, if you don't get a confirmation email, that you reply back to me to say, I would like to confirm that you received my application. A little repetitive, but the applications are due on February 1st. Don't submit additional materials with your application, just stick to what's being requested. The Chancellor's Office reserves the right to reject any and all applications. Of course, we don't want to reject anybody's application for a silly disqualifying event, right? So some reasons applications can be rejected include they were submitted after 5 p.m. on the 1st, the application was incomplete, the narrative section exceeded the page limits, or the budget was incomplete. again, we're really not interested in rejecting anybody's application because of a technical detail, and the instructions are pretty straightforward, so just stick to them. I know oftentimes it's compelling, you feel compelled to put a lot of bells and whistles on your application, but really just stick with the requirements and you'll be good. Any questions you have after this webinar or throughout the application process, you can submit directly to me. There's an FAQ on our website. On a side note, we are soliciting people to participate in the reading and selection process. So if your district or your college, any colleges within your district are not submitting applications, we invite you to join us in the selection process. A lot of you guys are the experts in the field and on the front line doing this work with your students, and so you have an invaluable perspective about what will make a good program, and many of you have experience running these kind of programs. So if you're not applying and you have just a little bit of bandwidth, we would really appreciate if you would join the selection committee or selection group. Information about participating in the selection process is also posted on our website. So those are all the slides that I have today, and unfortunately I see that we have tons of questions and I can't answer them outside of the FAQ. So what I will do is thank you very much for your participation and taking the time. I know everybody's very busy, and hopefully you're all busy writing the applications. I will leave the webinar now. I will grab all of the questions that have presented in the chat box, and I will begin immediately putting responses together for those questions. Again, I repeat, if I don't answer your question, like it appears that I did not understand the actual question you were trying to ask, then just reformulate it and resubmit it, and I will take another run at it. So thank you, everyone, for participating. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all sorts of grand applications from you guys. Thank you.